This evening, I'm talking with Scott Merrit, very interesting and I guess colorful character. You're not wearing your steampunk thing.
No.
On this cruise. Last year on the low-carb cruise, on the formal nights, he had this steampunk outfit, which was quite unusual. And Scott is a farmer, but that's your hobby, right?
Yep.
And you make your living selling T-shirts.
Yep.
At various different conventions. Tell us a little bit about what you do for a living.
Well, every weekend, somewhere in the United States, there's a music festival or a science fiction convention or a comic convention or a gaming convention. Some of these are rather large. Our largest show of the year generally is Dragon Con, which runs about 75,000 people over 4 days in Atlanta, Georgia. And we set up a booth at these shows and we sell a variety of shirts ranging from Star Trek, Star Wars, Princess Bride, to mad scientist stuff, to steampunk shirts, to things with just generally snarky phrases on them that amuse me. Mm-hmm. And I think will amuse my customers.
And you do fairly well with this?
It's a living. It's rough. The last couple of years with the downturn, people aren't buying quite as much as they were, but people generally always need clothes, and at least for the moment, we're able to make do on it. So
they need clothes, and they're willing to pay a little extra for whimsical clothes.
Well, to be perfectly honest, what we sell a T-shirt for is not that much different than what they buy a comparable shirt for at someplace other than Walmart.
And now, you've done this for several years.
I've been doing this for 34 years. 34
years, okay. So you know the ropes and you're good at it. And you obviously have stuck with it long enough that it is a living. Like
the product mix has changed. We originally started off in the music business. We started off selling LPs and cassettes, and because it sort of goes along with what music stores sell, branched out into buttons and bumper stickers, and then branched out into T-shirts, and over the years their T-shirts have basically taken over the entire line.
But that could again change to something
that could
else.
Change.
Just follow whatever the trends are then.
Yeah, though at this point, since we do produce T-shirts not just for ourselves, but we do contract printing for other people, we will generally have T-shirts in the mix.
Now you have a farm.
Yes.
And what caused you to buy a farm?
I went to the doctor. I hadn't been feeling well. I, like many people, had been on a cycle of I'm too fat, go on a diet, lose a few pounds, go off the diet, gain back everything that you'd lost plus a little bit more. I was very large. I hadn't been feeling well. The doctor diagnosed me with an advanced case of pre-diabetes, metabolic syndrome, suggested that I needed to lose at least 50 pounds immediately, and put me on a number of drugs, one to control blood pressure, a statin drug to control cholesterol, a drug called Januvia to control blood sugar. See, I told you I'd remember it. And a number of other drugs. And
how long ago was this?
This was about 5.5 years ago.
Okay, so it's fairly recent.
Yeah.
And so in this got you into the farming business?
Well, I, like so many people, said okay, and took my doctor's advice and took all these prescriptions and went and got them filled, and proceeded to feel even worse over the next 6 months or so while taking all of these drugs. I was having all sorts of interesting reactions to the drugs. And yes, my blood sugar was being somewhat controlled by the drugs, but one of the side effects of that particular class of diabetes drug is that you put on more weight. And I went from...
So is Januvia a glyburide?
I'm not certain which class it is. It's one that is no longer offered for sale because it turns out that too many people were having heart attacks. It was known during the trials, and the FDA approved it anyway, but enough people apparently died in 6 to 8 months that it was available for sale that they removed it from the market.
So you were lucky.
I was lucky, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even have a better chance of dying in a car crash than the odds, because it was, still 1 in several thousand. But I decided that I was not happy with taking all of these drugs. They weren't cheap. Even though I have insurance, it still wasn't cheap. And I wasn't feeling any better. I was getting fatter. So I started looking for alternatives. And I looked around on the internet and I found a number of websites devoted to something called low carb, and something that I had always thought was a diet that was invented by a quack named Robert Atkins. But I read
You and Jackie Everstein.
Yeah, well, I read a large number of testimonials of people who said that they were controlling type 2 diabetes with low carb. And I said, okay, I really have nothing to lose, because if this is living, I really don't want to live this way. And I went on a low carb diet, and within 6 weeks, my blood sugars had stabilized without any drugs. I lost about 25 pounds in those first 3 weeks, and I actually started feeling relatively decent. Still wasn't feeling real good, especially when I first went on the low carb. I had a really bad case of induction flu, as it's come to be known. Now I know what I should have been doing to combat that, but
that's kind of an interesting thing. I read about induction flu myself, but I never experienced that.
You're lucky. A large portion of that depends upon how your body reacts when you lose that much electrolytes, because of course you're losing a lot more water when you first go on.
Well, one of the things that I did, and I'm not really sure why, I decided that I was going to go on it gradually. And what I did is I spent several days just journaling what I was eating at the time, and to calculate and then I cut the carbs in half.
Well,
And then I cut the carbs in half. And then I eliminated all the grains. And then 3 days later, my hands quit hurting. So that was...
it does work. However, I jumped in with both feet because I was desperate.
And the same thing, my wife did that. She basically went cold turkey, and she felt really horrible for a while.
But we started seeing the results, and at that point, we were living just south of Sherman, Texas, in a little town called Howe, and my shop was in Sherman, and our landlord basically told us that he was going to give us another substantial rent increase, and Sherman was actually starting to get a little too citified for us. We had moved out to Sherman from Arlington when Arlington grew to the point that we were finding it unlivable, and that we wanted to be further out in the country. And Sherman and Howe were both starting to get that same way as civilization creeped up 75, and right about that time they started digging up 75 to expand 75, and I was having to put up with road construction every day. We decided that we wanted to move, And at that point, we were originally just looking for a couple of acres to live on. And I was still doing research on low carb and organic products and natural foods, and learning all about Monsanto and Cargill and a number of other large big food companies, none of which were doing anything that I really wanted to put in my body. And I still feel really guilty anytime I have to buy a Monsanto product to use on the farm, but unfortunately there still are some things that unless you're willing to wait 5 to 7 years to kill them, it's not going to die without the application of a proper chemical. But we try and minimize that to where we absolutely only have to. We do try and use natural practices wherever we can.
So this getting your farm, it sounds, for our previous conversations, it sounds like you're actually enjoying the living on the farm.
Yeah, I do, though, to be perfectly honest, a big part of that is because Kim does the majority of the day-to-day work on the farm. I, of course, am still running my business, and I am on the road and out of town over half the weekends of the year.
Now, for the folks watching this, Kim is your wife.
Kim is my wife, yes.
So how long have you been married?
13 years.
So roughly a little less than half of your marriage together has been on this farm, and you managed to talk her into doing all the work.
No, actually, she keeps adding things to the farm, and since these are things that she wants to add and she wants to do, she generally is the one who will start that up. When we bought the farm, and like I said, we were looking for 1 to 2 acres. We decided that maybe we should look for something a little bigger, and we actually found the place that we wound up buying in Trenton. It's a little over 20 acres. We found it for a fairly nice price. Unfortunately, we did not realize, because we were both city people, gee, the place looks pretty. Comes with some livestock. I'm buying all of the farm equipment. This shouldn't be too bad. After we bought the place, we took 1.5 years of intensive classes from Weston A. Price Foundation and the Noble Foundation out of Oklahoma. Collin County, north of Dallas, has a extensive program of classes that they offer for CEU credits that include a large number of beginner classes. We took every single one of those we could, and we discovered that the farm was not in real wonderful shape because the guy who owned it before us did not know what he was doing. His dad
Which might have been why you got it cheap.
Well, no, he had been he had a day job, and he'd been transferred to Illinois. And his family was in Illinois. They owned a large farm in Illinois, and he'd been wanting to get back up there. So,
you mentioned the Weston A. Price Foundation. That's come up a lot, especially in paleo circles. Chris Masterjohn, the guy I talked to last year.
Yeah, he's a lipidologist.
Yeah, yeah, we had a good time with that one. Yeah, but he actually does some writing for Weston A. Price.
Oh yeah, he's a regular columnist for them.
Yeah. So, what all did you learn from Weston A. Price?
Basically, we were interested in some traditional farming practices, and they actually have an online archive, which not only includes recipes and other things of interest to people who are interested in traditional cooking and healthy cooking before big food got horribly involved. They actually have an archive with articles involving farming practices dating back to the late 1860s.
Mm-hmm. So this has been helpful in bringing your farm into better shape?
Well, it was helpful as far as we did not want to be a modern farmer growing the few crops that we do of GMO crops, using chemicals for everything, using chemical fertilizers, chemical weed control, chemical pest control. We didn't want to do that. We were planning on eating the meat from our animals. We didn't want our animals eating unhealthy stuff.
Mm-hmm. So that you didn't have to eat
right,
animals.
Because unfortunately, and a lot of people do not realize this, chickens do not have the capability that we do to expel and burn toxins.
So anything you feed
feed them, and that includes the arsenic and lead and mercury that is currently in most commercial feeds, stays in the chicken for the chicken's entire life. Mm-hmm. And yes, it may be in parts per million, so that the FDA has not cracked down on it, even though what they allow in feed is 2,000 times what they allow in our water supply. Because people drink the water supply and they're just dumb chickens. But over the course of
then we eat the chicken.
Because most chickens that are farmed for food generally are farmed within 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, we had some previous conversations about the various different animals that you had. You just added goats.
We just added goats. Or Kim just added goats.
Kim just added goats.
I've been home maybe 7 days that we've had goats.
Mm-hmm. What do you plan to get out of the goats?
Milk.
So you're not going to eat the goats?
Oh, we will. We unfortunately have a sick one right now that she's very contagious. We don't want this to spread to the rest of the goats. And the disease that she has does not affect the meat. So, as we learned, we basically have a couple of choices. We can kill her ourselves and bury her pretty much in concrete and quicklime somewhere on the property. We could have a vet put her to sleep and dispose of the remains. Or for the same price as paying a vet to do this, we can have her processed and actually get some meat back. It's not going to be very much meat, it's going to be very expensive meat, but we'll get something back for...
And you'll protect the rest of your herd.
Having her put to sleep humanely.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have anything else you want to add? You've arrived at a sort of a roundabout way into low carb. Are you convinced that this is the correct diet?
It's the correct diet for me. I would not necessarily say that low carb would be for everybody, but I would say that probably lower carb would be for everybody, because the standard American diet contains way too many carbs, contains way too much processed food. Our government certainly hasn't been helpful about this. In fact, they've been exactly the opposite ever since the McGovern Committee 35 years ago formulated the first set of nutritional recommendations. And what do we have since then? We have an epidemic of obesity, prediabetes, diabetes, cancer, all of these so-called diseases of modern civilization, since the recommendation that people should eat 5 servings of grain a day, a minimum of 175 grams of carb for your average adult. And that's not even getting started with what they've done to our grains. Mm-hmm. Because the wheat and other grains that we are eating now bear no resemblance whatsoever to what I ate as a little kid or what my grandparents grew.
I'm sort of a libertarian bent, and I think that a large portion of what's wrong with our current food supply is because of government.
Oh, I don't think there's any question of that. I am, unfortunately, I wouldn't even say libertarian these days as much as anti-government, because my personal philosophy at this point is that the system is corrupting. People may go into it with good intentions, but anybody who holds a federal office for more than a couple of years gets sucked into the system. and they lose sight completely of the people out in the hinterlands.
Well, I guess we pretty much covered the bases on this, and I promised I wasn't going to keep you much more than 20 minutes, and we've already been 25. It's been fun talking with you.
It's been good.
Appreciate you coming over and talking with us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.